There we go. We started a series last week entitled Fresh Fruit, where over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be looking at the fruit of the Spirit and really how we take and apply those in our lives, with our attitudes and our relationships in a world that desperately needs God's people to be filled with the fruit of the Spirit and practice them out today. The very first fruit in Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 and 23. The first one is love, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And that word for love is agape love, a sacrificial, unconditional love for someone else. The most notable place in the New Testament that word love is used, agape, is in John 3:16, where Jesus said, "For God so loved," agape, sacrificial, unconditional love, the gift. "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believed in him would not perish, but would have everlasting life." And so that's the word we want to look at today. And so as we thought about starting this series off in love, I thought that we would just get Gina up here. Gina, come on up. Y'all give my sweet wife a hand. And through the rest of the 8 of the fruits of the Spirit, we're going to talk about how to apply them individually. But we thought with this one that what we would do is we would say, all right, how do I live out agape love in our relationships? Now, if you are single here today, this doesn't just apply to marriage, although we will apply it to marriage. And so hopefully if you are married here, this is kind of an encouragement, an enthusiastic thought on how to live out love in your marriage relationship. But if you're single, don't check out, because this same kind of love applies in our friendships. It applies at the office. It applies in every space, in every place that we live. And so, sweetheart, thanks for coming up here and joining me. And now, I never pick on you when I teach on Sunday morning.
I do think he gets a little bit worried anytime I do come up on stage with him, because payback is fair play, right? Isn't that what they say? Is that how that goes?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? It's funny because growing up, I was kind of just the shy, quiet, boring kind of a kid. I never knew I was so worthy of so many sermon examples.
So...
Me and Rex, right? If y'all know my dog, we seem to make the list quite often. But
I know they love it because they know you're going to give it, or they think you're going to give it back to me.
I'm going to give it back today.
I think you should.
And this is my last service, so no hold.
Yeah, don't hold anything
to
back.
The wind, right? Yeah.
So and if her mic goes out, y'all will know why. But anyway, we want to just kind of come up here and walk through the idea of what does it look like in marriage? What does love really look like in marriage? And we also want you to know that, we're not up here because we've never had problems. We've never struggled. We've never argued. That is not true. But we have navigated through some difficult issues. We have gone through in our lives some hard seasons. Her mom dying of cancer. We've been through multiple miscarriages. My brother committed suicide. There were some tough seasons in our marriage that we had to navigate through, and they could have built a wall between us, caused us to separate or move away from each other. But instead, we found a way through in some of those seasons. And so I mentioned Galatians chapter 5, verse 22, that word agape. I mentioned John 3:16. But another place that word agape is used in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, that if you go to a wedding, been to a wedding recently, you may have heard this read. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4 says, "Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy." And again, that word agape, it's a verb. It's not a noun. It's not a feeling. It is an action. So really, the better way to read these would be, love practices patience. Love practices kindness. Love practices not envying. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It does not keep a wrong record of wrongs that are suffered. That means we are constantly erasing the wrongs that we feel like were done to us, either real or perceived from time to time. It says, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Love, listen to this, always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. So when we come to this idea of love, agape love, love is not a feeling. This kind of love is not a feeling. This is the kind of love, it's something we do. It's something we express. It's something we act out.
So it's interesting, my life group, the Caton Chapman Ladies Life Group, we just finished studying the book of 1 Corinthians. And there's some really, if you want to challenge, go study 1 Corinthians. There's some tough topics in it. But right here where this verse that John Mark just read was given, Paul was talking to the Corinthians because they were arguing. They were arguing about everything under the sun, who the best leader was, what they should eat, what they shouldn't eat, where they should go, how they should behave. You name it, pretty much every behavior is in the book of 1 Corinthians. And so in the midst of all of these issues, this is when Paul says, remember to love. And I just think that's so important. Like if you look at our society today and our culture today and all the disagreements, it just seems like that love is the one thing that just seems to be missing in so many different places, for sure.
Exactly. You know, it's interesting, if we're studying for this week, ran back across a study on the biggest stressors in life.
Right. And John Mark and I have talked often about the fact that the most difficult times in any relationship, whether it's marriage, with kids, at work, whatever, the most difficult time is when one or both parties are under stress. And so we came across the study that reminded us of the 10 most difficult, stressful things in life right now. And the top one was death of a spouse. The second most stressful one was just the act of going through a divorce. The third most stressful situation, according to this survey, was a marital separation from your spouse. Fourth was detention or imprisonment in an institution. I can imagine that would be...
Marriage again.
Marriage, yeah, no. Death of a close family member. They put those right together for a reason.
You looked at me when you said that.
Personal injury or chronic pain or illness. And we've seen this. Like John Mark and I have walked along the situation of the stress that comes because of a long chronic illness and the fight that marriages go through with that. The seventh biggest stress is just marriage. Marriage can be stressful. I thought that was interesting. The eighth was being fired or let go at work. Ninth was marital reconciliation. And this is something we don't think about. You know, like you think about the stress of a marriage unwinding. You don't think about the stress of putting it back together. And then the 10th, which I think I disagree with this one, but the 10th most stressful thing according to the survey was retirement from work. Like I'm looking forward to that.
Hey, who all's retired in here? Is it stressful?
Oh, somebody was like, kind of.
Yeah, kind of. I don't know. I can't wait to try it out. Give it a go.
Everybody's like, when are you leaving?
Yeah, that's just one bad business meeting.
But it was interesting because 5 out of the 10 top stresses have to do in some way with marriage. Yeah. And so, we just thought we'd take this time today to talk about love, talk about marriage. I'm seeing I think it's our junior hires that are over in the corner this service. But I'm just hoping that you guys do not check out if you're like, oh, we're talking about love, I'm out of here. Because I really remember a specific time when I was in junior high and I was sitting at Spring Baptist Church in my little classroom in the gym, and my Sunday school teacher said to all of us in junior high, today we're going to pray for the man you're going to marry someday. And I was thinking, okay. And I remember that prayer. I remember praying specifically that God would just put the right man into my life. And little did I know he was like 2 doors down in a different room in that same gym.
I am answered prayer.
Yes, you are. But so if you are, in high school, junior high, it's begin now thinking about what you want your future love to look like.
Yeah. And if you think about those 5 of the 10 biggest stressors in life, somehow, some way have to do with marriage. We need to address this. We need to be willing to address this. And so wherever you are in your space, our hope is not that you would look up here and say, okay, that's the perfect marriage, because, man, we've worked hard at it and we put some things together today, 6 ideas for you. But wherever you are, we want to encourage you to begin to practice love. And I think you'll see something special begin to happen in your relationship and in your marriage again in the midst of all the stress. I ran across some data this week that I didn't know, but 70% of all of the divorces are initiated by the wife, not the man. If you didn't know that. And some of the top reasons why they do that is because an ongoing, really bad action or activity of the man's life, an addiction or ongoing affairs, different things like that, not a one-off thing, a consistent thing, or the dude just emotionally checking out and abandoning her in marriage. And so if you're a man here today, I want to encourage you to at least take this moment. If you're married, you're sitting there with your wife, is say, I'm going to be all in. I'm going to begin to practice these things. And if you feel like, man, y'all are just, you're doing great right now in your marriage, let this just be a word of encouragement. If you're separated right now, if you're one of those things where there's emotional distance, let it begin to drive you back together. Another study out there you can go look at, it's called the Gottman Marriage Study, and it's a massive marriage study where they looked at literally thousands of couples, and they begin to ask them questions of, do you think you have a great relationship or a good relationship, a fair relationship or a bad relationship? Then, once they self-identified whether they had a great relationship or a poor relationship, then they begin to ask, do you have this problem? Do you have this problem? Do you have this problem? And in the problem category, they begin to define and develop this idea just from the research of marriage couples, that there are basically three ideas when it comes down to problems in marriage. There are those problems in marriage that are solvable. There are problems in marriage that are solvable. And a lot of times those, who's going to clean house, who's going to do the dishes, those are solvable, right? Who's going to put the baby to bed, who's going to mow the yard. Those are things that sometimes we can disagree with. How many times we're going to be intimate, what are we going to do, where are we going to go? Those are all problems that how many of you know we can come to a solution, right? But if we don't solve those solvable problems, they become perpetual problems. Once they become perpetual problems, then hidden motives show up. Well, here's what I think. Here's what you think. I'm going to try to get my way. And so if we don't solve those problems that are in fact solvable, they become perpetual problems. If they stay perpetual problems, then they had a third category. Then they become gridlock problems. That whenever that issue comes up, I'm just going to dig my trench. I'm going to build my wall, and there becomes a wall of separation. Here's the interesting thing as you just continue to read that Gottman study, is that a lot of times we think bad marriages have more problems than good marriages. Go read the study. Good marriages and bad marriage have the exact same amount of problems. It's how they deal with them. It's how they deal with them. And so the difference between a bad marriage and a good marriage is not a good marriage is problem-free. They got problems. They've just chosen to deal with their problems in a productive way, and they don't let them become gridlock problems or perpetual problems. They solve the problems. And then if there is a problem, and not all problems are solvable, so only 69%, I think was what the study said, are solvable problems. Some are just, you're not going to fix it. And one of the issues they said was like a bad in-law. How many of you know, don't raise your hand if you have a bad in-law. And if they're in the room, please don't point at them. But a lot of times, if you've got a bad in-law, you can't fix that. How many of you do know that? Right? But you can choose to either fight about it all the time or figure out how to not fight about it. But you're not going to fix that problem. And so that's kind of an important thought as we think about good and bad marriages. Don't think good marriages don't have problems because they have the same amount of problems as bad marriage. It's how we deal with them.
Right. So in addition to just the stress and dealing with those problems, another issue that we see is when in a relationship of any sort, when problems start to become because of laziness in the relationship. Yeah. And so the things that we researched and studied, one of the top things that can happen as far as a sign of laziness in your relationship is if you just completely stop courting or dating, you forget the things that caused you to fall in love with your spouse or your boyfriend, whatever, to begin with, that's just a warning sign of laziness.
Yeah, and part of that, dating and courting and flirting, it's going to look different over seasons. Mm-hmm. If you go back at our lives, you can clearly see different seasons where different dating habits took place. When I first were into the ministry and we came to Dallas and we got married, literally we had zero money. I was going to school, we had no money. And our date night included on Sunday night going to Wendy's and sharing a Wendy's Frosty.
And we didn't know any different, so it wasn't a big deal.
We got 2 spoons, just so you know. They did give us 2 spoons, but that was it. Then as you journey forward a little bit, then we all of a sudden, she has 4 kids. How many of you know she has 4 kids? And our dating habits went from, man, Wendy's to, all right, the kids are at school. Let's get some time together because tonight all 4 of them are going to be back. And so we would go to Kroger and we would have dates, scheduled dates at Kroger where we would have sushi and coffee over here in Allen. How many of you think that sounds like a romantic date at Kroger? And a lot of y'all saw us. Yeah, some of you have been there. A lot of y'all would see us and you'd say, hey, and you had no idea we were on a date in the middle of the day having sushi and coffee together. And we just thought, then as you journey forward and you get kids in college and man, you're even broker than you thought broke. You thought what broke used to look like, didn't you? See what broke looks like now. And it's just a date is a long walk with the dog, with her big dog. Well, they're not really long walks because he'll quit on you after a while. He'll just shut it down. I'm ready to go home. And now we're at a place where we're kind of empty nesters. And it looks different. There are times that I'll post a picture and say, oh, y'all go out. Sometimes I'll look at her at 8:45 or 9 o'clock and say, hey, let's go out. Because that's when I get home from church or something. So it can change over season, but never stop flirting and dating your bride.
Mm-hmm. Another warning sign of laziness is when you tend to become a little bit bossy with the other person and things you could do for yourself. You just start asking, could you do this? Can you do that? I'm probably the most guilty about this. but I
think she lays in bed pretending she's asleep, waiting for me to get up. And about the time I put my shoes on, I begin to walk out of the door. She goes, would you bring me some coffee? She doesn't say it maybe.
I was convicted by this point. But another point of laziness, I'm not just preaching to you, I'm preaching myself too. So another sign of laziness is just if we just stop caring, like we stop taking care of ourselves, our environment, our home environment, we just tend to, let things just kind of go downhill. Another lazy warning sign is you begin to neglect the special occasions in somebody's life who's special to you, birthdays, anniversaries, just things like that. You cannot forget the big events, guys. Yeah. I mean, remember the big events.
Yeah, and if you're married to a guy that forgets the big event, remind him it is okay. All right, it is okay. Don't let him forget.
Yeah, don't set him up for failure.
Yeah.
And then the worst, I think this is kind of the saddest thing to me, is when you just decide you're going to check out. Like, you do your thing, I'm going to do mine. You just have gotten to the lazy point where you just don't even care to try anymore. That seems the saddest to me.
Yeah. So we thought we would just give you 6 ideas, 6 thoughts. If you're in a relationship, you're married, even if you're single, on how to develop or redevelop a sincere love. And wherever you are in this space, I truly believe if you'll live out these 6 things, if you think, man, we are just waiting to go to the divorce attorney, if you'll begin to practice these 6 things, you'll begin to see your hearts and your minds turn back towards each other instead of further away from each other. And thought number 1, it's got to start here, is communicate lovingly. Your conversation with each other needs to be about communicating with the other in a loving way, in an honoring way. And by the way, that's both in public and in private. You do hear me, and I admit I pick on Gina a lot in public. It's part of just who I am. It's my natural nature. I've never been that pastor that doesn't want you to know what's going on in my life. I'm just going to kind of get up here and tell it. But I will also tell you this, that there are certain things you will never hear me pick on her about. Why? Because they hurt. And she will pick on me about certain things, a lot of things, and I deserve a lot. But there are some things she doesn't pick on me about because it hurts. Does that make sense? In my communication, we are going to communicate in a public and a private way, in a way that is loving towards each other and encouraging towards each other. I love what Paul said in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. He said, listen, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according, listen to this, to their needs. So how should I talk to Gina, and how should Gina talk to me? Not in a way I want to, but in a way that will build her up according to her needs. There are certain things she needs me to say to her. There are also other things that she does not need me to say to her. And I want to develop a habit, a perpetual habit of communicating in a way that builds her up and encourages her, that it may benefit, there's what Paul said, benefit those who listen. And so we never want to develop that attitude of hostile communication, argumentation, just letting it go on and on again. But I want to communicate in a loving way.
There are several types of negative communication, not just speaking down to the one you love, but there's also negative communication as it pertains to, they call it character assassination, where what you say, your quotes, the actual words out of your mouth actually put a little dig into your spouse's character. You may accuse them of being selfish. You only care about yourself. Yeah. Or you may say, I can't believe a word you say. You question their integrity. Or you may say, you're just a failure. Those things, just little things that you can say in passing. I don't think they're little things actually, but that just take a dig at the person's character. And the saddest thing is this can react in two ways, and one of the ways is that the person who hears it starts to believe it about themselves. And so the negative communication, character assassination is definitely something to avoid. And then in addition to that, the negative communication, the threat of abandoning the other. It's like, I don't even know why I'm here anymore, saying something like that, or I just can't do this anymore. That begins to put the smallest crack in the value made of till death do we part, and it just begins to put thoughts in the other's mind. And then also you want to avoid invalidating the other person's thoughts and feelings. Yeah.
And so as you think about communicating lovingly, and there, my guess is if you've gotten into a habit of communicating in an unloving way, there was probably an incident in the past or something that happened in the past that caused you to say, I can never believe anything you say. Well, maybe something happened and they lied, but that doesn't always make them a liar. So you want to be careful that you're not constantly attacking their character. Well, the only way I can get back to a place where I'm not attacking their character or constantly threatening abandonment, I'll just be gone. I'll just leave. Or why don't you leave? Those are ideas. Man, we need to get rid of that conversation because why? It's not communicating lovingly. Sometimes the only way we can do that is number 2. You ready? Which is to forgive lavishly. That we need to constantly and consistently be heaping forgiveness on our mate. And we don't need to bring up that I'm just going to forgive you for that. Because if we're constantly bringing it up, it doesn't feel like forgiveness, right? So we want to be in a place that we're constantly forgiving each other. Look at Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32. Here's what Paul said. He said, be kind and compassionate to one another. Forgive each other just as in Christ God forgave you. How did God forgive me? A lot. Over and over and over again.
Right. I mean, I think there's not a person in here that would say that if you know that if you love someone, you will at some point have to forgive them, right? And so we might as well be ready. And sometimes this forgiveness comes in different scales of, bigger things and smaller things. But sometimes it's the smaller things that if you don't forgive, they can add up to, like John Mark was talking about, the bigger things. And it's funny because so often I do something at the right time for John Mark to use it in a sermon illustration. I hate that I do that.
I love it. I love it.
I really don't try. But it was interesting because last weekend we weren't here. It was John Mark's 40th high school reunion.
You don't have to say the number.
I do. I'm like proud. You look good for an old man. Oh, anyway. But so honestly, he really wanted to go. How many of you guys really want to go to your reunions? Okay. Well, he really wanted to go. I really did not. I'm like, go for it, hun. You go ahead. I don't know anybody. It sounds like fun. You go, have fun. And he was like, I really, really want you to go with me.
I did.
Well, why? Like, why do you need me there? Like, I don't know anybody. We're from the same area, but he grew up in Spring. I grew up in the Woodlands. So 2 totally different school systems. But And so I even went as far as to ask a man in our church that graduated with him the year after him. Well, graduated the year after him, same school, and he wouldn't go. So he kept on and on, so I agreed to go to this spring high school reunion. And so he knew I was apprehensive. I was late. We could have been at the lake, but I'm just saying. So we went to the reunion, and it started at 6 o'clock.
We're old.
Y'all are old. I was thinking that. And so it started at 6 o'clock. So we get there, and he knows that, I don't know. John Mark is very outgoing. And then I'm very much in a social setting, very much shy, or wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah.
And so what do you think is the first thing that happens? John Mark gets tapped on the shoulder. We're in a conversation. He turns around, starts talking to the person. I'm still, left there talking. This happened all night long. Finally, I didn't even know where he was. And so I began I could feel myself getting frustrated. I could be at the lake. I could be somewhere, but anywhere. But I did meet a lot of really nice people that night. I met a lot of his friends. I heard a lot of really good stories. But I found myself getting frustrated with why did you need me here? Why did you need me to, And I found myself getting a little bit angry. And so I ended up just sitting down at the display table that they had, and I read the entire class senior yearbook from beginning to end. And I found out a little bit about my husband. I think there's pictures. So I found out that John Mark was was most humorous.
I'm a funny guy.
I was like, really? Yeah, you are funny. And then he was also class favorite or something. Yeah. Class favorite. And that's him right there, class favorite. And then there he is. John Mark Caton is told his car is on fire. And if y'all know John Mark, I knew John Mark back then. He had a Z28 or something like that. And
4-speed Z28.
And he would have definitely been in a panic about that. And then this was my favorite. It's right at the, kind of the center of the yearbook, but what is on his head? But did find out a lot about my husband that night, but some really good stories too. While he wasn't talking to me, I was talking with everybody else who filled me in. So, but anyway, my point is really, I remember the moment that I decided, you know what, I'm here. I'm not going to get angry with him. I'm going to let him do what he wants to do. This is his night, and I'm just going to make the best of it, right? But I think sometimes we just can let those little things just make us angry, and you carry it home, and then it carries to the next day and continues.
No, that's exactly right. And because that was not my intention. I wanted to bring my wife to my high school reunion, right? And then it just became me being me and talking to people and me talking to a lot of people. And she could have gotten frustrated and she could have been angry. But by the time we left, she goes, boy, that was nice. And I had no idea she had gotten pictures of things. And she was plotting her revenge, I guess. But the truth is she didn't let it carry over. And as I look back and we were driving away, I was like, yeah, that didn't turn out the way I thought. I just had this opinion that we were going to be together all night. It just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And it reminds me, if you think about forgiveness, I love what little things, right? This is a little thing. Peter came up to Jesus and said, hey, Lord, if in Matthew chapter 18, he says, Lord, if a brother or sister sins against you, how many times do you forgive them? 7 times. Now, I want you to know, he's talking about someone close to you, someone that is a husband, a wife, someone, and he's talking about little sins, little things, all right? And he goes, Jesus' response is not 7. But an unlimited number is really what Jesus is saying. Now, the truth is, that's for little sins, like going to the reunion or little things that happen. There are things, how many of you know there are monster sins in marriage? There are certain sins. If you talk about if the husband or wife has an addiction that continues to come up, or if there's an affair involved, that is not the kind of sin that is being talked about. There are certain things that should never happen, but if they do happen, they should never happen more than once. Do we understand that? But then there's a development of a plan on how to fix this. And so you had some ideas on.
Well, so we talked about this, and there are really some definite steps you can take if you're a person that likes to kind of take things step by step. And the first thing is you just determine, you know what, I'm going to work on forgiveness. I'm going to work on this. And it may not happen overnight. It may be a process, but that you're going to determine that you're going to work on it. And then I also think, and this one's harder for me, like I like to just hold things in silent. I'd rather just hold them in than talk about them. But that's really not good as far as forgiveness goes. You need to be open and honest about the conversation, what's bothering you. And I let him know at the end of the night what was bothering me.
You did.
I did. But, and then you need to be willing to let it go. And by that, I mean, I don't mean just let it go. I'm not trying to slough that off, but it cannot be every single conversation. You have to try to move forward. And then I also think it's best to talk about a plan to make sure it doesn't happen again and how it's going to look if it does happen again. Like talk about those things in advance. I think all those are part of forgiveness.
Absolutely. And so if there is one, if this little stuff, man, don't let the little stuff that happened yesterday destroy today. Or the little stuff that happens today. I will guarantee you, this may shock y'all, I will do something today that will annoy her. How many of you know that? Right? And carry it over, carry it over, carry it over. Now, there are certain things that you've got to put that plan into place. You've got to say, you know what? This should have never happened. And it should never happen again. So I want you to know when we talk about lavish the other one or forgive lavishly, this is not permission for them to do anything and everything they want. But this is also an opportunity for us to step back and be honest. Now, you've got to determine, I'm going to try to forgive. I'm going to be honest that you just crushed me. That hurts every time. Or you destroyed me in front of other people. You did something this. But then you put a plan in place and you go, and if it happens again, here's what's going to happen. And just be that honest. And so those are the first two thoughts, man. Communicate lovingly, forgive lavishly. Here's number 3, and this is important. Create an atmosphere of fun in your relationships. Create an atmosphere of fun in your relationship.
I think this is true in every relationship with your kids, with coworkers, with friends, with your spouse. It just, you have to be intentional about creating an atmosphere of fun. I have friends that they are such great planners. I'm always in awe of what all they do, but they're intentional about it. And one thing I didn't know about John Mark when we got married was he never stops. Like he really is the one person I know that could probably do without sleep. Any of you guys married to somebody like that? They're like, what are we going to do now? I'll be in my pajamas at 9 o'clock at night. And he'll go, you want to go to the movie? No. But guess what? We usually 9 times out of 10, I throw some clothes on and we go to the movie. But
yeah, she doesn't go in her pajamas.
No, I do not go in my pajamas. But the point is there we have to find that we definitely have to find that happy medium when it comes to how much fun you can have.
How much fun you can have. And I'm always looking to do something. Like if we have a snow day or something happens that, going to be an ice day or whatever, she gets to stay home. COVID or something. She sees that day as an opportunity to sit by the fire and read a book. How many of you are sit by fire, read a book type people? See, I don't get y'all at all. That is an opportunity for me to get the Jeep out of the garage, tie a rope, and say, listen, I've got a great idea, sweetheart. I'm going to put you back there, and I'm going to drag you through the neighborhood. And she will go, no, this is a great day to sit in my pajamas. These are exact quotes, a lot. Sit in my pajamas by the fire and read a book. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound fun.
That's when I'm thankful I have 2 boys, because they'll be like, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that with him.
It does help. I love what Solomon said, Proverbs 15:13. He says, a happy heart makes the face cheerful, but heartache crushes the spirit. We want to learn to laugh with each other and even at each other if we're laughing at the right things. Proverbs 17:22, as we create an atmosphere of fun, a cheerful heart is good medicine. Don't get in a habit in your relationship where you're never laughing, where everything is business and everything is serious, regardless of who you are. You want to continue to create an atmosphere of fun. Here's number 4. We want to practice consistent kindness. We always want to be kind to each other. And part of practicing kindness is certainly what we do, but I will also tell you, this is where touch comes in. Man, being kind with hugs and kisses on the cheeks and just smiles. And those are actually practicing acts of kindness. And we want to constantly do that. Man, we want to do whatever we can to make the load lighter. If someone is really stressed or strained, just pick up the load. Do something out of kindness and don't constantly make them ask or encourage you along the way.
And then I think also one way that you show kindness is by when your spouse is wanting to achieve something, whether it's at work, going back to school, switching jobs, or something around the house, like just that showing kindness through jumping in and helping with their goal. I think that so often we can either encourage to build up, or we can go the opposite direction as well. It can be something as little as, like, I don't know about you guys, but at our house, every now and then, there's something that I want to do. He has no desire to do it, like around the house. And I had the opportunity, I had helped a client buy a house, and they were selling all the furniture in it. And so I decided that I wanted the kitchen table that was in the house. It was a round table. Our family has added 3, 2 son-in-laws and 1 daughter-in-law recently. And so I was like, we need a bigger table. So he didn't want to do it, but he got on board, got the truck. We did have a table. It was given to us 32 years ago. We still have the table. I love the table, but it's just not big enough. So I said, hey, I need you to get the truck, and we're going to go get this table. So we go to Allen, to this house, we pick up the table, put it in the truck, we get home, it doesn't fit in the door real well, and then we finally get it in place, and I stand back and I look at it, and I'm like, now I need a place for the other table. Anybody like this? So I say to myself, well, I have a dining room, so that'd be the perfect place for the table, but guess what's in the dining room? John Mark's office.
Which is a great place for an office. You're right there next to the coffee pot and the food.
So I have a lady I work with that's a designer, and I said, hey, come over and tell me, hey, this is what's priority in your house. This is how you're going to make this work. Guys, any of y'all sitting here going, I've heard this story before. So she comes over and she goes, you know what you really need to do? And you really need to paint because we had the wood-stained baseboards. You really need to paint all your baseboards and all your crown molding white. And so I'm like, yeah, you're right. I really need to do that.
All because of the table.
All because of the table. So that ends to me, of course, I can't pull all the furniture out, right? And so we pull all the furniture in the entire downstairs away from the house, and it takes them a week to paint. We have to spend the night out, anyway, all this. So then he moves the office upstairs. We move his office upstairs. And he loves that, having to walk. It's what, 15 steps that he has to go?
That's not the important part. I was right next to the coffee pot.
I will get you a coffee pot.
Wait, no, here's what happens. All because of this table, right? I'm now upstairs. We've now painted our trim. The old table that I liked is now where my office used to be. Then she moves me upstairs, and then she says, I go, well, where's my desk? And she goes, well, I don't like the desk you had, so we're going to get rid of that desk. I've got another desk that I like. So I get upstairs, I'm on this little table, and she goes, oh, by the way, it won't be in until October 26th.
Fortunately for John Mark, I don't do this very often.
Yeah, she does.
Just to clarify, I'm not it's my once every decade.
Do you want to tell him what happened to my knee?
Well, so he's still complaining because when all the furniture was in the middle of the room, he went to the John Mark night eats. I don't know if any of you guys do that, but so he got up to the middle of the night to eat, and he ran into the coffee table that was in the middle of the hallway.
It hurt.
Yeah, I know.
You want me to show?
No, for sure not.
Bruise.
But I know that, I mean, there is a point to the story. Along the way, I knew he didn't really want to do it. I knew that he knew it was important to me. I was rearranging things in the house. It was important to me. He got on board. He was supportive. And to me, that's the biggest showing of kindness that there was. And literally yesterday, he stood back in the downstairs. He went, I like that table.
I actually did. I hated to admit it.
So, I mean,
like
just so often we can just show acts of kindness by just being, finding how we can be supportive of our spouse.
Absolutely. Here's number 5. Encourage each other daily. So practice acts of kindness, but also encourage. You say, what's the difference between an act of kindness, something you do, you're willing to go out of your way? Encouragement, that word encouragement, literally, if you look at the Greek word, it means come alongside someone. Just, I want to come alongside her, or she wants to come alongside me and encourage others just along the way as they make their journey. Early in ministry, Gina sat through many wedding rehearsals on a Friday night. All right, so date night number 1, wedding rehearsal. Then date night number 2, Saturday night. And she was just there for me to go through those 2 things. Many times with couples and families, she didn't know. But she was just willing to come alongside or go to funerals and be a part, just to come alongside and support and encouragement. So we want to constantly be doing that. I look at Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. This is her favorite verse, by the way. If you want to know, Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, when we were sitting here preparing for this, she's got her sweatshirt on. She didn't know. I go, you realize Philippians 4:8's on that sweatshirt, and here it is. It says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if there's anything excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things.
And I think so often, if you look at those words and they kind of roll off your tongue. But I think if you look at the opposite, where sometimes we, in our relationships with our spouse, our kids, our coworkers, whatever, we get guilty of being stuck on focusing on the complete opposite things. Instead of whatever is true, you begin to focus on really what's really not true. It's something that happened, but it's not the total truth. Or you zoom in on what's undignified instead of noble about the one you love. Or you look for what's ugly or weak in their life, and you kind of zoom in on those things. And you focus on the criticism, the things you can criticize instead of the things that are praiseworthy. And that's why this is my favorite verse, because I think so many things in life are just a mental shift. If you give them to God and you just say, I'm going to focus on something different, then the outcome can be totally different.
And the truth is that we're very different in a lot of ways. I'm outgoing. I like being in groups. I like being with people. And that's just not her nature. But can I tell you, that's part of what drew me to her. You saw kind of my high school, and she'll tell you, I was the nut in high school that you're like, all right, he's always at the scene of the accident. Typically, I was driving the car. That was totally not her. We grew up together. Man, she was that, in my mind, that perfect girl, the one that always made the right decision, quiet, and that's what drew me to her. Now, in these issues, in these seasons now, it could create frustration, because I'm always like, you want to go do this, you want to go do this, you want to go do this, and she goes, not really, not really, not really. And then at the same point, she goes, hey, how about if we do this? And so those things, and this verse applies, those things that drew you together, don't ever let them now be the things that you attack each other for. And that means you're no longer focusing on what is good and positive and trustworthy, all of those things. You begin to let those positive things become negative because you're focusing on the negative and no longer the positive. And, just one of the things that I love to try things. I love to go do things. Gina, we go out on the boat a lot. But Gina's never driven the boat bar. She'll drive the boat when I'm in there. I'll get it out of the slip. I'll get gas. I'll do whatever. She'll drive it out there, but she doesn't like to be in tight spaces. It just makes her nervous. And so we just kind of decided this week she wanted to take some girls. I said, babe, it is time for you to learn. And so we just kind of sat out there because she wanted to do it. She's wanted to have her friends up and drive the boat, but she was always nervous. I said, we're going to get it done today. And so we go to put it in the slip, and she kind of tried us to parallel park in the slip. How many of you know what I'm talking about? And she looked at me and she goes, all right, I don't want to do it. I go, no, we're going to do it. And back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Then we went over to get gas. That was funny. That poor dude waiting to give us gas, watching her do this all the way around. And I'm just sitting there going, you got this. It's going to be funny, and I'm going to start videoing here in a second, but you got this. And sure enough, we got her to where she's somewhat confident, pulling in and out. First thing she did was able to take her friends out. And so, guys, come alongside your bride, and ladies, come alongside your husband and encourage them along the way, day by day, to do something and help them. Because for me, I will tell you, someone that grew up on a boat, it can be frustrating when people don't know how to drive a boat. And I could have been angry with her, but I want her to be able to enjoy what she can enjoy and what we enjoy on the boat with her friends. And did it with some of her ladies in a life group.
Yeah, took my life group out, a few ladies, and they told me I drove like a grandma. But I'm like, listen, you're safe.
She does drive like a grandma.
That's right.
And my thoughts are that's why God created life jackets.
Exactly. So, but yeah, so encouragement is definitely something that you can become complacent about for sure.
Yeah. And here's the last one. And we won't spend a lot of time. Man, whatever you do, surround yourself and your relationship with supportive friends. You have got to have people around you that support your relationship and encourage it along the way. You can't just surround yourself with people that are trying to draw you apart. You can't just surround yourself with people who are going to talk bad about your spouse, your husband, or your wife. You've got to surround yourself with people that are going to support you. None of us are perfect, but we just really felt like if we would just talk you through those things, maybe there's a marriage in here that you're on the rocks. And you've just forgotten some of the basic principles. Maybe there's a marriage in here that you've had one of those big sins. And you wonder if you can press on and you can make it. Can I just tell you, maybe this message was for you. That God still has a plan for you. God still has a desire for your marriage and your relationship. And if you have kids, you need to do everything you can to hang in there and stay in here. Because your kids need you today in this world more than ever before. And so we just want to close by praying. And so just bow your heads there where you are. God, I just pray that what we've said today as we laughed a little and talked about some principles that, they're not out of this world, they're not undoable, but they're ones oftentimes in a crazy, busy world, we just forget to practice. God, I pray that we would leave here, and regardless of where the marriage is or the relationship is, as people leave here today, they would know that they can bring the joy back, they can bring the love back, they can bring communication and loving communication back, they can forgive beyond belief, they can encourage and be kind to one another. Those are all very doable things. And also, God, that we would surround ourselves with supportive friends. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. God bless you, and God bless your marriage.
Thank you.